So,
People
welcome
are.
everyone to SQL Friday. It's a new season. I don't know which episode number we're on. It's 100 something something. I'll look it up so the title becomes correct on YouTube later on. We have Brian on the call. It's very confusing because I have a transcription that translates to Swedish. I just need to remove it just for myself. I don't know why it's translating, but we just said before that every time you open Teams, it's going to be different. And Ryan is going to talk about Fabric Data Warehouse, which is kind of the same. It's the new and shiny. It's in preview, so things will change from what you see now to when you start playing, probably. And then I just want to say one thing. If people think, when I announce what SQL Friday is about, I'm saying it's about SQL Server. And if people think Fabric is not SQL Server, well, it is, but it's also other things. But the queries you will run is SQL Server, and therefore it's perfectly on topic for SQL Friday. So I'm really glad to have you here. It's the first time you're on. Yes. You were doing a lightning talk, which I had to cancel because of traveling last season. So I'm really pleased to have you start the season for us. So
sure.
I'm going to shut up now.
It's fine. Well, thank you for having me, Magnus, and thank you for all the attendees. I count 25 already. That is. I'm all on heels with the number of attendees here, and I also see already known names in the chat. People from Norway, I see, and that's also that's great. Great to see you again. And if I haven't met you before, nice to meet you. I can't see you, but you can see me. I'm Brian. I will just start the demo, the slide deck here, and there you go. For the sake of this, I cannot see any questions in the chat. So if you have any questions, please write them in the chat. And I hope Magnus will take a hold of them and just interrupt me at the worst possible time. It's fine. I like that. Just interrupt me, and then I'll take the questions as they come, because when the questions come, we are most often on the topic, and then we can just browse through and forth in both the demo and the slides, and then perhaps give an answer.
I see that as a challenge to interrupt you at the worst possible time. So we'll see if I succeed.
Please do. My name is Brian. I'm from Denmark. I'm the principal architect of Fellowmind in Data and AI. I am also trying to do some blogging on my blog. And if you scan this QR code, you will be guided directly to my LinkedIn profile, and I will gladly hook up with you and expand my network and have a good dialogue and discussions on the data world. I'm a data platform MVP and also a fast-track recognized solution architect on Power BI and a Microsoft certified trainer. So enough of me. I hope that is fulfilling. After this session, you will find my slides and the demo scripts in my GitHub. You can also see the address here. And if I'm fast enough, I will write you the link directly in this chat after the meeting, so you can download the slides as a PDF and also the demo scripts. So let's get going. If I can change the slides, for some reason I can't. There you go. Fabric data warehousing. What is it? Well, first of all, it is nothing new. We have already seen it in the Synapse serverless pools. We have also seen it in the Synapse dedicated pools. It is, from my perspective, just a matter of incorporating the Synapse engine into the Fabric universe. It is perhaps not as you cannot maintain your dedicated pools in Fabric because it is a complete SaaS solution, a software as a service solution. So you cannot manipulate it. The only way you can manipulate it is to buy more capacity. So that is the way. And in order to get started, I would like to help you with the transitioning between Synapse serverless and the warehouse. I'm only comparing the serverless part here because the dedicated pool in Synapse is working in a completely different way, and the warehouse inside Fabric is more or less just the serverless service implemented into the warehouse fabric. So the first thing is that the compute engine is still the Polaris distributed query engine. The Polaris distributed query engine is a quite beast, if you ask me, to understand. But I would like to give you the first couple of slides to try to tell you and try to help you understand what the Polaris distributed query engine actually is. So let's start there. The Polaris engine is an engine that has separated the compute from the storage completely. It is also called stateless compute, where you have all your data stored in either a data lake, or in this instance in Fabric, you have it stored in one lake, which is of course also a data lake with some sprinkles on top of it. And your old standard SQL server in the basement or on your laptop is a on-prem architecture where you have your data, your metadata, and your caches in one engine with the MDF and the LDF files. One of the things with the stateless compute is that you no longer have access to the MDF and the LDF files. You cannot handle your transactions. You cannot handle your log files and your growth and so forth. But that is fine because my data is now stored in a lakehouse or in a one lake or in a storage account. It is just files stored in Parquet. I'll get back to that later. When I store a file in the Polaris engine, I actually store it as a one chunk of data in one file or more files. If I do more files, then I have implemented my own user partitions. Normally, we see partitioning on date, on year, on month, typically, and I have also seen organizations using partitions on organization level, on a high level, because your organization is so big, so that it could make sense to have partitioning on organization level. So I'm only reading the data that is covering my organization at a very, very, very high level, and then I'm filtering on the year and month, and then I have a very small chunk of data from which I'm doing my analytics on. Once you store your data in your user partitions in the Polaris engine, the Polaris engine will, and you cannot handle this, it will store it in hash distributions. So the user partitions are the rows in this picture, and the hash distributions are the way that the Polaris engine is storing the data in a Parquet file. You don't have to know this. Sorry, you can't do anything about this. The only thing you can do something about is the user partitions, how many partitions you're having, the size of your data files, and so forth. The hash distributions is nothing you can do about. It is a Polaris Microsoft handle mechanism. Every chunk of data here is called a cell, and one cell or more cells can contain your object, your table, your chunk of data. I have marked 4 cells here. This could be a table, this could be an employee table, and once I start to do manipulation on this data cell, these data cells, the Polaris engine is accessing them from the storage account, reading them into the cells, and one or more cells is a collection of data cells called a data set. These cells are then handed over to the distributed query processing inside Polaris. I'll come back to that later, and processed in whatever means you are asking for, a select statement, a compute, a whatever you need. I've also added Cosmos DB here because that is actually also an option in serverless, in Synapse serverless, to ingest data from the Cosmos DB directly. We need to do a bit of work in order to do that in Fabric. So once the data cells has been handed over to the distributed query engine, it is chunked down into tasks. A task is a distinct operation you need to do on your data. It could be a calculation, a sum, a filter, a something. And one or more tasks can be grouped into a directed acyclic graph. A direct acyclic graph is an operation that can be handled by the compute engine inside Polaris. And the compute engine is just, look at it as a SQL Server node in a high availability cluster. This operation is then handed out to the compute, and the compute is done in parallel and then handed back to the Polaris engine. You could also see it in this way. To the left, you have your UI, you have your transactions, all your metadata. This is where you access your SQL frontend. The SQL frontend is in Fabric still a UI thing. It could also, of course, connect to it from SQL Management Studio and Azure Data Studio. No matter what you do, you are connecting to a SQL frontend, a single server endpoint from where you could do your queries. These queries are then handed to the distributed query processing in Polaris, and the distributed query processing in Polaris is then asking the backend SQL pool for compute power based on your needs. In the demo, you will see some quite interesting behavior on these backend SQL pools. What is happening? Why is it working like it is, and so forth? But I'll get back to that later. The SQL pools is then accessing the data in the OneLake, and the data runs backwards, but outside of distributed query processing, directly through the data channel to the SQL frontend and presented to the end user or the application needed. If you would like to read more, I have links here. The first link is the white paper. I can see I did a typo there, but I hope you can read it. Anyway, it is not Polaris, it is Polaris. And if you don't like white papers, you can read the blog post here. I really like this blog post. It is a condensed soup of how is the Polaris engine working. And Thiago Balabush is actually a Microsoft employee, so he knows his way around the Polaris engine. These links you can click when you get the PDFs, when you get the slides. So back to the comparison. The storage engine in serverless is Azure Data Lake Studio, and a storage account in Azure, and the warehouse is the OneLake. The OneLake is still just a storage account, but with sprinkles on top. You have a Windows application where you can connect to your OneLake, and you can also connect to the OneLake from your Azure Storage Explorer if you would like. Of course, the OneLake is also distributing data to all the services in Fabric. Perhaps you have seen the slide from Microsoft where they have all the services on top, and then they have OneLake in the bottom where all the services are connecting to. There's one about there about Custal, but I will not go into that today. Storage formats. In serverless, you could use whatever storage format you would like. Avro, Parquet, CSV, JSON, and Delta Parquet. If you don't know Avro, that is the opposite of Parquet. Parquet comes with a built-in column store index, whereas Avro comes with a row store index. It is mostly used when you need some special filtering and some special needs on your server. The OneLake is only Delta Parquet, but it comes in two flavors. It comes in Snappy Parquet and just the Parquet files. I'll show you that later in the demo. The languages in serverless, you could do data query language, and you could do some data definition language if you created a CTAS, create external table else. Then you could do some data definition language there. In the OneLake, you have the complete full power of your data languages. You can both do data definition language, data manipulation language, and data query language. So this is quite new because in the OneLake, I can now manipulate with my Parquet files from a SQL statement. This is brand new, and I'll show you that in the demo later. The T-SQL support in serverless is almost full. There are some things you cannot do. One of those is a recursive CTE. You cannot have a CTE that asks itself for data because that process requires storage in a SQL engine, and you don't have storage in the serverless. In the warehouse, you still don't have storage, but you can actually do recursive CTEs. I like it, and it will be a full support for T-SQL. Right now, there are some things that you cannot do. For instance, a truncate is not working, but you have to do a delete. I tried to do some performance loading on the Fabric warehouse, and I used the Open Data Storage from Microsoft. This is a storage account everyone can use. You can sign on to it with anonymous login, so they are not logging what you're doing. This storage account contains both New York City taxi. It also contains some green taxis, green caps it's called, and some weather data and so forth. But here I'm using the forever lasting New York City taxi warehouse. I loaded it with a standard copy activity from this source, from this open data storage, and copied all the data, all 1.5 billion rows to a warehouse with standard setup in a copy activity, and I got somewhat around 86 megabytes per second and loaded all 50 gigabytes in around 10 minutes. Is this slow? Is this fast? I don't know. If it was my data warehouse and I pushed 50 gigabytes through in 10 minutes, that would be fine for me, because the data warehouse is bulk loading, typically each night or perhaps a few times during the day, and a throughput of 86 megabytes per second is enough for me. If I can write 1.5 billion rows, 50 gigabytes in 10 minutes, well, that should be enough. So a demo. What is this beast? Let me see if I need to find the correct. It must be this one. There you go. I created a Fabric workspace for this demo. It is called SQL Friday, and I've already created. I need to delete this one. Sorry. I've already created my warehouse. The warehouse is just a matter of clicking new, and based on the experience you are in Fabric, you get selected elements to choose from. Right now, I'm in the Power BI experience. If I choose my data warehouse experience and I click new, where is it? There? Here I'm in the warehouse experience, and if I click new now, I'm getting a complete different list of elements I can choose from. I can create a pipeline, a data flow, and so forth, and I can also create a warehouse. It's the bottom one. I've already created this because it can take a few seconds to do it. So let me just open this. And this is one of the things, as we are speaking, Microsoft is doing deployments all over the place. We are still in public preview, so it can be slow. This is a visualization of the elements that I have in my warehouse right now. It is grouped by schema. I have the DBO schema, I have a data warehouse schema, and then I have the default guest information schema and the sys schema. In order to load data to this warehouse, I am going to be so self-driven to start from the lakehouse, just to show you. In the lakehouse, I have already copied 3 files. These 3 files can be done can be uploaded in different ways. I can either choose to upload a file or a folder, or I can also choose to use my, where is it? I haven't started it. Let me start it. The File Explorer. The File Explorer has I've installed the OneLake application for Windows. And in this OneLake application for Windows, I can now see my user, all my work groups here, workspaces. And I have the lakehouse and the warehouse. In the lakehouse, I have my files and my tables and some other system folders. In the tables, you will see I have customers, orders, and products. And my files are just my CSV file, customers, employees. Employees is actually not showing here. I'll tell you why in a bit. And I have the orders and products. One thing I saw, I also just told Magnus about this before we started. If you delete a table in the UI in Fabric from the files, delete a file, it is not deleted in your OneLake Explorer in Windows. Even though how many times I hit the reload button, it will not remove the employees table, even though it is not yet there. So I have to, in order to do this, I have to upload it once again, and I get this, and I need to find it in my downloads, and I have it right here, my employees table, and I think I'll get an error. I'll just overwrite if it exists. I did not get an error today. That's fine. Now I have my employees table, file, and it is now visible here, even though it is the same file. Now I have my files in the lakehouse, and I can now convert these into new tables. I can click this, load to tables, create a new table, customers. As you see, I have already created these tables beforehand, so I cannot create it again. This was just to show you how to do it. As it is a CSV file, I'm getting options to define if I have a header column, and I can also define my separator. If this was a JSON file, I would get different options, and also if it was an Excel file, I would also get different options. Once I'm done, I can load it, and then it is converted from a CSV to a Parquet file. Let me just, for the sake of this, delete this one, and then show you how it works. The employees, I would like to create this to a new table, employees table, separator, load. This is only 1 kilobyte, so it should only take a few seconds. And while I'm doing this, I can show you what's happening behind the scenes. These files, the CSV files, are now converted, moved into the tables area, and migrated into a snappy Parquet file. So the warehouse is storing the lakehouse is storing snappy Parquet files. And this is nothing new. It is a Parquet file, and if you have already worked with Parquet files in Synapse serverless, you will know that it also has a JSON following the files to tell the engine which files to read. Let me see if this is done, and I can refresh this. No, this is one of the bugs right now in this application. Once you are loading your tables, it is not visible here until you have to wait a few minutes or even hours sometimes. So just trust me, the table are now here. It is called employees, and once I hit it, I can get an instant preview of what is happening here, what are my data, and that's fine. Back to the warehouse. Once they are in my lakehouse, I have just, oh, the light just went off. Just hang on, I'll be there. I need to hit something. There you go. Sorry, I'm back. Once the data is in the lakehouse, it is stored in a database called Lakehouse, and you can access this database from your Fabric universe. So this is the lakehouse. This is the name of the lakehouse, and I can now actually begin to run queries against my lakehouse from my Fabric warehouse. This is my customers. I can also do it in orders and products and so forth. I've already created the schema. So now I have the ability to create tables and load them from my warehouse, from my lakehouse directly to my warehouse with the create table statement. This looks a bit like the CTES, the old CTES command, but it is just a create table from a select statement. I can run this. And then it now creates the table for me. It reads the data from the customers, loads it into the data warehouse.customers table, and it is succeeded. And if I unfold this, I need to refresh. Just hang on. And here you have to wait. There you go. Now the customers tables are loaded. If I click it, I can see a preview of what is in this customer table. It is just the AdventureWorks customers table, so no harm done there. And while I'm loading the rest of the tables, let me show you what is going on behind the scenes in the.
Can I ask you a question about this?
Sure.
When I do this create table as select, is that a load of data, or do I just reference the existing Parquet?
This is an actual load of data. I'm loading the data to a new table. If I would create not a load of data, but just a reference to the data, I could create a view. Then it would read the data live from the lakehouse. But this is a table, and the table is storing data in Parquet files, and it is now stored as table in my warehouse. Good question. Thank you.
So now, from now on, the only writer to that, I mean, I guess it's going to be a Parquet file under the hood somewhere.
Exactly.
The only writer is equal to that file, I guess.
Exactly. And let me show you, because the warehouse has now tables. If it would refresh for me, it won't. Trust me, it now has tables. And the tables are stored in Parquet files, not in Snappy Parquet, but in Parquet files, because the Parquet files without the Snappy in front enables updates of the actual content inside the file. So what is actually happening behind the scenes here in the Fabric warehouse? Let me show you, because I need the connection string. It is this one. Copy, and then I need to connect this to the. Was it this one? I guess so. Yes, connect. This is just Azure Data Studio. I've made a notebook. I'll provide you with all these notebooks in the GitHub, so you can run it on your own setup. I'm just connecting to my endpoint from the Fabric warehouse. I've found it in the gear icon up here, and then the SQL connection string, I copied that, and then now I'm connected to this SQL instance. If I select the version, I need to remove, sorry, I just need to remove all of this. There you go. If I select the version, I'll get the version as I would any other SQL Server in Azure, even though it is a SQL Server database, a SQL Server server, or a managed instance. It will still be Azure SQL Data Warehouse version 12.2000.8 from September 23. The same version. And what are my setup here? Well, the setup is that both my lakehouse and my warehouse, here named lakehouse and warehouse for ease of read, is just a database in the server. It is nothing new. It is just a database referencing to my files in my OneLake. One of the things we need to take into account is this here, the collation. This collation has some, for me, annoying things. The one that are not annoying is that it now supports UTF-8. That's fine. But if you are into your collation names, then you also know that this collation enforces a case-sensitive database. So you cannot just write in small letters. You need to know where the capital letters are in your objects and also in your columns. This is a bit annoying, but that's fine. Once we know that, we know how to write our scripts. And then all the rest of the properties are as we would expect. What about the properties? What product version are we having? Well, we still have the same version, but the engine edition is actually the same engine edition as I would have from my serverless SQL pool in Synapse. The exact same engine version, exact same engine edition, so nothing new there. It is just a copy of the actual engine edition. What about the compatibility level? It is still 160, and here is the thing that I just found out. Look here. The recovery model is full. If I'm building a data warehouse, I'm very, very seldom selecting the full recovery model because I don't need the full transaction log of what is happening because I know what's happening. I'm not an OLTP system, so I don't get it why Microsoft still believes that a full recovery model on a stateless SQL server is needed. If you query this on a Synapse serverless, you will get a simple recovery model, but in Fabric it is still full. Perhaps this will change in the future time. What about files and locations? Well, they are just stored any other ways that you would imagine. Here I have the warehouse. I still have rows. I still have logs. The rows are just there because I cannot have a database in a server without having both an MDF and an LDF file. And these are stored in some arbitrary storage somewhere in Azure. That's fine. But what about the physical names? Where are these actually stored? The master database. Look at this. I find this quite funny. If you have been on the private preview of Fabric, you would also know that the private preview name of Fabric before it was named Fabric was actually Trident. So we still see Trident in the configuration of Fabric. No matter if you're using a warehouse or lakehouse, it is still stored with some Trident names here and there. You will also encounter still some error messages that tells you that something has happened in Trident and not in Fabric. Don't be mistaken, it is still Fabric. You are not in another place or in another world. But do we have a TempDB? In Synapse serverless, we had a TempDB, and of course here, as it is a copy, we still have TempDBs. I now have 12 TempDBs, and these are all with the same size of 2 gigabytes. So I know now that I can handle 24 gigabytes of data in a temp calculation using TempDB. I cannot enforce TempDB usage, but I know that the TempDB is now capable of handling 24 gigabytes of data. But what about normal DDL and DML scripts? If you saw the portal here, I have also the ability to look at the information schema. The information schema tells me all different stuffs about the database. How is it built? What are my columns? What are my tables, domains, and so forth? And I can see them here, but there is a but. If I do a select statement, nope, invalid object name. So even though I can see the information schema in my browser or in my application, I cannot access it. I think this is because we are sharing servers across Fabric instances, so I'm only having access to a specific types or specific databases inside that server. If I have access to information schema.tables, I would be able to look at other tables in other servers, in other databases. So that's just okay, but for God's sake, I still have access to sys.object, so I can see the same thing, but now only filtered on my server. And one funny thing, let me see if I can find it. I need to expand this a bit. One funny thing, I would love to see if I could find it. Oh, sorry. Is it gone? It's gone. Okay, yesterday I had actually access to my jobs, my sys jobs. Well, I don't have that anymore. Yesterday, when I did this demo, exact same demo, I had access to my SQL agent job tables. It could be funny to do a create job agent step inside Fabric. I tried it, but I don't have access to it, but the objects are still there. It is not anymore, so that's fine. So what happens if I create a new table? I can do this in the warehouse, of course, with SQL statements. And if the dbo.customer does not exist, then I would like to create dbo.customer with the mvarchar of 100. That's fine. But look at this. If I run this, I'm not allowed to create a data type of mvarchar 100. mvarchar 100 is not supported in this edition of SQL Server. It is actually not the edition. It is the collection that enforces me not to use Unicode because it is UTF-8 enabled. If I remove the N, then it's good to go. I have a table. And as I told you, I cannot truncate. Truncate is not yet available in Fabric Warehouse, so I cannot do a limited logged truncation of my table. I need to do a delete. Even though this is empty, it will run for a few seconds and tell me that it has now deleted 0 rows in around 7 seconds.
And if it had data in it, it would be, I guess, then fully logged, the delete.
Yeah, because we are in full recovery model, it will be fully logged. Yeah.
And you can't change that?
I can't change the recovery model of each database. It is locked by Microsoft. Unfortunately, I haven't found a way to do it. Perhaps other people can, but yeah, that's what I found. That's what I found. So let me see if this is now done. It only took 7 seconds, and just to show you, I now have my 4 tables in my warehouse, and I can now begin to query them. I could also do my SQL statements in this demo script was just a select from and then put it into a table, but it could also be stored as a stored procedure or as a function or as a view. I have all the possibilities I have on a standard SQL server. I have this in the warehouse with a few limitations about the truncate and of course the recovery model. So what happens now if I would like to build a data model? Well, no, I need to show you this. I really like this. There's a new possibility here. Perhaps it is not new, but I can create a new visual query. A new visual query is when I started working with data, I stumbled upon a version called SQL Server. Was it 2005 when we got SQL Management Studio? I can't remember. But when we got SQL Management Studio, we got the ability to design a query using the query designer. This is the exact same thing, but perhaps in a modern shell. I can click this, and then I can drag and drop my objects into my visual query, and it will show me what I can do with a mouse. I can transform, I can combine, I can do reduce rows, I can sort, I can merge, I can do whatever I need on my table. If you have ever played with Power BI data marts, this is the exact same experience. It's a copy paste of Power BI data marts. I can now do my data manipulation in a UI fashion with a mouse if I don't like to do it with code. I like code, so it's up to you to decide if you would like to do the visual query. That's fine. Once the data is loaded, I can begin to build a model. The model is one of the panes in the bottom here. I have the data. Here I can see the data. I can build a query. And the last thing is I can build a model. By the blink of an eye, I am totally recognizing this picture, this layout. it is what Power BI is in when you build your data model there. One thing to bear in mind is that the properties of each of the table, when you do it in this way, is in direct query. So by default, when you're using the warehouse, the connection to your warehouse to Power BI is using the direct query mode. There is also the old school fashion of import, and that is available, of course, through Power BI Desktop, and then you have the both. And then there's the new one that is only applicable to Lakehouse called Direct Lake. It is out of scope for this session, but it is there, and now you know. Here I can build my relationships. I can do it's just a matter of drag and drop as I do it in Power BI. This is a one-to-many. It is single. I'll make this relationship active, and if I click this, it will actually also create a constraint for me. This constraint will enforce that every row I put in my table with a reference to the customers has the correct reference to my clients, to my customers, as any other constraints in the SQL Server. Let me just quickly do it the same thing with the product.
So is it a foreign key created in the database, or is that enforced in the Power BI layer? Well, it's got to be in the database, I guess.
It is in the database indeed, because if I now try to drop my customers table, I will get an error with a foreign key constraint exploiting that. So, and let me just get my employee ID to the employee ID. There we go. Cardinality, one-to-many, single, relationship active, and then confirm.
We have a suggestion here from Fleming.
Yes.
Try using all uppercase when you query information schema. And Fleming says it may work because it's case sensitive. So both information schema and dot columns or dot tables, if that's uppercase.
And then information schema dot tables like this.
Yeah.
Let's try it. Yeah, it works. Thank you. Wow. Yeah. Of course it is case sensitive. Thank you, Fleming. I need to change this. It was here. Does it also work down here? It was. It will. No, let me see. Right. Sorry for that. It is somewhere here. Of course, I need to write this in capital letters. Thank you, Fleming. Thank you. So I can still use my information schema. That's new for me. I need to change this demo then. That's fine. Back to the model. Now I have a model, and I can, of course, I could do things with it. I could hide columns. I could hide even though tables. I don't want to have this dummy customer table shown in the Power BI model. And I can, of course, also create a new measure. And sometimes the UI is buckling with me. There you go. It loads twice. So please bear in mind, once you begin typing your measure, just let it load twice, or else the measure will be cleared again, and it will just say measure equals. So just wait a bit. Let me just write sum of freight or something equals sum of freight. Sum of freight. There you go. One small thing I saw, was it released last week? If you have an unclosed parenthesis, it will be marked with a red font color. I like that because now I know I have an unclosed parenthesis, and if I close it, it will be blue again. So a small help for us with a lot of parentheses. We now know which one to close. Thank you, Microsoft, for that one. Enter, and the measure is now saved in the table here. Of course, I can manipulate with this. Sorry. There. I can put it in a display folder. I can put in a format and other stuff that I would in a normal data mod. So now I'm ready to build a report. I can click New Report. And here I'm presented with the data model. Let me just move that one. I'm presented with the data model, and I can begin to pull in sum of freight by, I don't know, by customer last name, something, and begin to just use the drag and drop feature in Power BI as I would any other way. Perhaps also filter on the first name if I would like that one. Put it up here. And just the last bits of pieces, a total sum of freight. Well, Very, very fast. Nothing new there. This is not a Power BI session. This is not a Power BI session. So just know that you can now build a Power BI report here. I can save it, and let me just call it SQL Friday with a capital L.
And I'm just going to guess now, because if you implement direct query towards your on-premise data source, your Power BI report is going to be fairly slow because it has to travel. But Power BI sits right on top of data lake or OneLake, so this is going to be pretty fast even when it's direct query.
Yes. So let me show you. I'm just clicking now, and it is filtering as I would expect any other report with import features. So this is quite fast. I have done some small testing between the direct query and the direct lake, and then the import mode. And there are, of course, when you get up to a very, very large amount of fact rows in your fact in the data models, you will begin to see a difference in performance between import and direct query and direct lake. But for a daily user, I don't see a problem here. It is perhaps a half a second difference when you get up to a decent amount of rows here. So I'm fine with this. It is fine by me, and then you're good to go.
And this measure that's living in Power BI. So is that ever materialized, or is it dynamically calculated as I go?
It is dynamically calculated as you go using the direct query engine from Power BI.
Cool.
You can, of course, be exposed to early materialization if you use advanced DAX, and then of course you will see a performance degradation because then it has to materialize all the data in memory and then do the compute and then present the results to you. But if you know your way around avoiding the early materialization, you'll be fine.
Cool.
You'll be fine. Thank you. What am I missing here? The last thing I would like to show you is some performance comparison. Let me just change the connection here, and I need to use this one. This is a different. I hope this is the right one. Just to show you what kind of performance we're talking about when we are working with the Fabric universe, I have a different warehouse set up here where I loaded all the taxi data too. And for the sake of this, I'm just clearing my procedure cache, so I'm not experiencing any cache when I'm using my queries. This is a count big. It should give me a. Let me just remove the old ones. There you go. This should give me around 1.5 billion rows in around 9 seconds. There you go, 1.5 billion rows. And these are not meant for information. These are just meant for demo. Now I'm doing a grouping for a count. It took around 3 seconds. And here I'm starting to filter and order by. It should finish in around 7 seconds. If I'm not mistaken, 8 seconds. And the last thing here is a filter, and then also by an expression on the pickup time, and this should finish in around 9 seconds. 8, yeah. I also, of course, have the ability to run my window functions on my data set. Here, I'm still manipulating 1.5 billion rows, and I'm getting a quite decent performance of 1 second for a window function across 1 month and 1 year, and 1 vendor ID filtered on 1.5 billion rows. I guess this is fine. If you noticed, I gained a performance and a better performance sometimes during this demo. If I run this again, let us remember the 9.9 seconds. If I run it again, wow, less than a second for the same thing. Why is this happening? Well, back to this one. If you remember, I told you that the SQL pools are asking for compute power once you start doing your queries. When you start doing your queries, you only have access to 1 compute node. And when you start doing enormous big queries demanding a lot of data, then the Polaris engine will ask for more compute power. And once that compute power is mounted to your instance, then you will see a huge performance gain. So this could mean that perhaps you want to preheat your Fabric warehouse before you run your warehouse loads, or else just wait for it to be mounted. It's up to you, but now you know that perhaps in the beginning you'll see a low performance, and then after a few seconds, while doing all your things, things will be much more performant. So what about performance migrations? Sorry, not performance migrations. Migrations of existing setups to Fabric. If I have an on-premise SQL server in a data warehouse and I would like to move this to Fabric, I have different options. I have an SSIS package that I need to code that in a data pipeline. The data pipeline is a complete rewritten engine in Fabric. They are perhaps borrowing a bit and pieces from ADF and also Synapse, but it is a complete different new engine. The stored procedures, if I'm using warehouse, can be migrated to a stored procedure, and the view to a view. Nothing new there. What if I have a Synapse serverless and I would like to migrate that to a Fabric warehouse? I have a pipeline to pipeline. And even though it is just a pipeline to a pipeline for the end user, you cannot reuse the pipeline code because the new pipeline engine underneath Fabric is a completely rewritten engine, and the mappings of each element in the pipeline are not the same. So you cannot just export the pipeline and then import it inside Fabric. You need to rewrite it as we speak right now. Perhaps that will change in the near future. I hope so. Or else I'll be fucked when trying to redo all my pipelines. Of course, a SQL view to SQL view. And if you have notebooks in Synapse servers, which you typically have, there's of course also the ability to run notebooks in the Fabric universe. What about the architecture? Well, from my perspective, the architecture is way more simple than it was before. Now I have my warehouse. I can use my stored procedures to do my medallion things. I can mount my data using it is called Synapse Link for Database. I can mount it, or I can use a data pipeline. I have not touched upon shortcuts yet, but I think we have time. These are one of the things that I always wait for last if we have the time. Let me start in the lakehouse and delete this one. Delete. Now I'm deleting the employees table. It's fine because I know where to get it again. But a shortcut is one of the things in the get data thing. You can get a new shortcut. A shortcut is a pointer to another place outside of your existing workspace where the data is stored. It could be another Fabric workspace. It could be another data lake, or even an Amazon S3 storage. Just bear in mind, if you start to read out of Amazon, you'll pay for the transaction cost out of that. So just hang tight. For this demo purpose, I'll use Microsoft OneLake, and I have the same table stored in another lakehouse. This lakehouse right here is stored in another Fabric workspace, but it still has my employee data. Here I can see the tables, and here I have my employees tables. I also have orders, products, and so forth. And I can now select this, and don't be frightened. When you unfold it, you will begin to see Delta log, and if you click it, you'll see partition and so forth. That's fine. It is just a matter of the way that the shortcut is representing to you what the data is actually looking like. So it cannot give you an example. You need to know where to get your data. Once you do this, you can do create. And now it will load. It will now create a link to the data. It has not moved any data yet. It is just linking to the data, pointing where the data is. And when I click it now, I can get a preview. So now I'm reading data that resides or are stored in a different workspace in Fabric, or it could be stored in a different lakehouse or in an Amazon S3. It takes a few more seconds because I need to start up that workspace also. And now I can see the exact same data as I did just a few seconds ago. There's only one way to look to find it. It has a very, very small, in the top corner, and a link icon showing that this is a linked table and not actually stored inside my lakehouse. And then I can run my demo again, and I could create the employees table once more if I would like to, because it is just residing there. Or I could create a view. I could create a view on top of this from the lakehouse, and now I have a live selection of data that could be delivered to me from my client or my sub-provider, something like that. So that was the shortcut, and of course you have the SQL Server endpoint. I just showed you how to find that, and then you can create a user, and then that user can have explicit rights to read different objects or even rows, and then you can give your data out there. Of course, you can build a data set, I just showed you, and build a report, and then you're good to go through the warehouse. What about scaling? What do I have to work with here? Well, you only have these options for now. Look at it as you are buying a new desktop for your basement. What size of desktop do I need for my compute? And how do I figure this out? Well, look at it as a compute unit, a capacity unit, sorry, a CU here, the capacity unit 24816. If you times this by 2, then you have the amount of vCores you have available. If you start on the trial level, you are starting on F64, which costs once they begin to bill you around $8,500 a month. Quite some markup from the old P1, which was around $5,000 and the same capacity. So now the light has turned off again. Sorry. Yeah, that's a gimmick I've built into the demo, but yeah, sure. So once Microsoft starts building this for you, I would start at 4 or 8 and then see if that's enough. Because out of the box in Fabric, you get usage reports, and then you can start to figure out what are my compute, what am I using, what am I utilizing, and then figure out what kind of level you are on. This is a monthly price. There will be, I've heard, there will be some prepaid capacity prices where these 8.5, almost $1,000 will be significantly less and somewhat close to the Power BI P1. Yes.
So for me, the pricing in Azure is always, I mean, there's a certain portion of magic to it. If I run queries against my Fabric data warehouse 24/7, just burst it with queries using as much compute as I guess. I mean, if I have an F8, I'm going to have it capped at 16 cores, but will I kind of hit the threshold where I can't compute anymore, or
no.
Will it continue? I can have a couple of worker nodes that run continuously just for me, and that's the price.
Sure, you can have things running 24/7, but the thing is that Fabric is using both throttling and smoothing. So you can actually get, if you are lucky enough, you could get for some workloads, you could get you could get boosted and then have 16 cores instead of just 8 cores for a single workload if Fabric finds out that the boost will more than half the compute. And then they have smoothing. So even though you are using the boost, it will smooth out over the entire course period. So you will still have the ability to use your compute in the entire period. Perhaps you will see a performance degradation at the last point of your billing period because you have used all of your compute power and it is only allowing you to use your capacity unit that you have bought. So that and smoothing and throttling is perhaps a complete session alone on talking about how does this work, but just know that you will not be closed down if you have a 24/7 task running. You will still have the compute available. Perhaps not a high-performance compute, but you will have it. That's also why Microsoft is providing you with the Fabric usage reports out of the box in Power BI to figure out how much compute have I used? Do I need to buy more? Am I overpriced? Do I need to buy less? It is a matter of knowing after a few months in production, am I overspending or do I need to buy more?
can you dynamically change it? If I know I'm not going to have users use my system overnight.
Yes.
Can
Yes.
I put
If you
F2 and then scale back to F64 again?
Because it is just a capacity that you buy in your Azure portal, so you can script this with the PowerShell. You can also pause it dynamically and then start it again. But if you pause it, just be aware that the one leg might not perform as good as you like because you don't have the compute power. So be aware when doing the pausing, then things will stop working, and unless you have the import mode in your Power BI. But you can scale it by using the Azure PowerShell thingy, and then scale up and scale down if you need it. Because there is, of course, an hourly pay-as-you-go. So if you only use the F2048 for an hour, then you pay that, and then you can scale down to F8 again, and then only pay $1.44 per hour. That's up to you and how you would like it. So sure.
And I think that's kind of a common use case that you need to do you don't run reports all the time, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. And I could see scenarios where you buy up when you are loading, and then you scale down again once you are just doing the reporting. Yeah.
So there is a question from JN. Would you consider Fabric as the first warehouse for a smaller company, or SQL Server still has a reason to be used if you're just starting to build your warehouse? What about cost?
Ooh, that is a good question. That depends on the amount of data, because if you can fit all your data inside the Power BI Pro maximum data model size, is that still 2 gigabytes, or has they changed it? I can't remember. Let's just say it's 2 gigabytes. Then I would go Power BI only and only pay $10 per user per month. If you are exceeding the data model size in Power BI Pro, I would definitely look into, is Synapse the way to go? Because then you are only paying for the data you are pushing through the engine. I think that is $5 per terabyte or something like that, a very, very small amount of money. And if you have the need to build a data warehouse that loads more data than it is cost effective to use Synapse, I would look into Fabric. So that is a 3-step approach. Is Power BI enough? Now I'm growing out of Power BI. Is Synapse then enough for me, or is it cost effective enough for me to pay less than $262 a month? If it is not, then I would go to Fabric. If it is paying less than $200 a month, I would still be in Synapse. That's my approach. Perhaps I think this is more of a gut feeling than a hard answer. Sorry, but yeah, that's the best I can do.
Yeah, and I think the part of the question, or is SQL Server still has a reason to be used? I mean, at least my take would be, if you don't have a data warehouse and you do need to build a data warehouse, then doing it on premise with a SQL Server that is licensed is going to be more expensive than starting small with a Fabric data warehouse. But that's just my guess, because SQL Server licenses on premise are expensive.
Exactly. Yeah. So I missed that in the question. Sorry. So yeah, sure. If you are starting to build a data warehouse and doesn't have anything, I would definitely go Fabric, Synapse, or if you have already paid the license on premise, perhaps that's fine. Just use that. You can install a gateway on your on-premise server, and then you have the data out of Power BI. Yeah. So perhaps the answer is, if you're building new stuff, look into Synapse, Serverless, and Fabric. If you already have an existing one, figure out the business case. Is it still feasible to have my server in the basement or at a data center somewhere, paying that amount of money each month? Or is it more cost effective to close that one, and then with all the calculation of cost out for employees and maintenance and power and cooling and all this stuff, and have it hosted in Synapse or Fabric? It is a matter of doing the calculations for a business case.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, if I would be a new company building up my infrastructure and I need to start to do reporting and data warehousing, That probably means I don't have a data center. So then it would be so easy, because getting a data center is going to be huge in cost, even just renting a rack in someone else's data center. So
Exactly.
there are already Azure data centers ready to start serving me. I don't need to look around for it, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And you can get started within a few hours. So yeah, and don't have to pay for the installation. So yeah. I don't have more slides. I don't have more demos. I'll just like to say thank you for attending. Thank you for listening up, and I hope you stayed around for the entire work. So that was my gift to this splendid Friday before the weekend.
And thank you for coming. Finally, we got you on, and I really enjoyed the session. I mean, this is the thing we should learn about. I still enjoy teaching people how the database engine works, but that's not new, and this is new for real. So